Board of County Commissioners called to order. Would Commissioner Pyle, would you please lead us in the invocation?
Pray with me, please. Merciful and Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity today of assembling together. Thank you for our health, our strength, and the opportunity in this country to have meetings such as these, and we pray for your divine guidance and intervention in decisions made here today that might stand for and represent progress in Person County. In Christ's name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Pernier, will you read us Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, is there any discussion or adjustments of the agenda? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
For approval.
Any discussion? All in favor of approval of the agenda, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Agenda is approved. Recognition, item number 1. Person County EMS receives a Silver Plus Award from the American Heart Association Mission. I'm sure I got that somewhere.
No, we just.
Just to Doug, okay. Mr. Young?
Board of Commissioners, thank you for allowing us to come up. I'd like to introduce to you Mr. John Dugan. He's the director of the Mid-Atlantic Affiliation of the American Heart Association, which includes the state of North Carolina. He's been at this position for 6 years, and he would like to take a few minutes, I'm very proud to say, to recognize our EMS division of Glenn LaBarre and Greg White. Mr. Dugan, thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's my pleasure to come to your county today representing the American Heart Association. The Mission Lifeline Award is a EMS recognition designation that started in 2014 with the American Heart Association. We work with systems of care, so we work with the whole system, EMS to hospital, and linking that patient care for time-sensitive emergencies. In this particular case, it's with what we call a STEMI, which is ST elevation MI. It's the most one of the most deadly types of heart attack, but is also a reversible type of heart attack. And with that, we created an EMS quality metric tool. So we work with EMS, we make sure that they have the right protocols, the right tools, the right equipment, and then they work with their skills. They teach their providers how to do these 12 leads. We can recognize that STEMI on a 12 lead machine that through funding, through your the budget process, they get the equipment, they do the 12 lead, they notify the hospital, and we shrink that time down. The recognition program looks at 2 major functions. One is chest pain patients, they get these 12 leads. Did they receive them 75% of the time? And then number 2, from the time they have that 12 lead done to getting that artery open, did they do that within 90 minutes? And science tells us that for every 30 minutes we go faster. So if we go from 120 to 90 or 90 to 60, 7.8 people out of 100 will be alive 1 year later. So going faster is better, and we advocate faster efficiency, not faster as in just going faster for the sake of faster. Also with our award, we have what's called the Plus Award. That looks at the time that they get on scene to the time they got that 12 lead, right? So if time is critical, if they can get on scene and get that 12 lead within 10 minutes, that means the faster they identify that heart attack, the faster they notify the hospital, the faster that whole downstream process. Pearson County has collected their data for 2016. They entered their data into our tool. And based on last year's statistics, they qualified for what's called the Silver Plus Achievement Measure, which means they qualified for the entire year. It was their first year applying. Next year would be, if they apply a second year, they could go for gold status, which would be next level. But Silver Plus means not only do they achieve recognition for the entire year of 2016, they achieved the plus metric, which is that first medical contact, that eyeball to eyeball, and that 12 lead time in 10 minutes. So, I would like to, the American Heart Association proudly recognizes Pearson County Emergency Medical Services in Rockville, North Carolina with a Mission Lifeline EMS Silver Plus Award for the 2017 EMS Recognition Program. It is signed by Nancy Brown, CEO of American Heart Association, James Jollis, who is the chair of the Mission Lifeline Advisory Group, and Stephen Hauser, our volunteer president. So on behalf of the American Heart Association, I'd like to present this award to Pearson County EMS.
Thanks, sir. One of the things I wanted to just let you know, although there's a 75% recognition, we actually went much higher than 75 in most cases. So I just wanted to share some of the information with you. One of the first ones was anybody who is over 35 and having chest pain, we have to have a 75%. Getting a 12 lead, we had a 97% last year. So that was something to be pretty excited about. On the STEMI side, where we actually took these folks and did it under 90 minutes, we actually met the 75% mark at that point. We had a couple that went over just because of our long distance transports. The third measure, we had none to report, which means if you take a patient who's having a heart attack, a STEMI, and take them to a non-PCI center like Pearson Memorial, we didn't transport anybody there. We take everybody to the appropriate facility, so that was a plus. And then for the plus measure, like I said, getting a 12 lead within 10 minutes, we had that 81% of the time. So we're a little bit higher than the 75% mark. And like I included in your, what do they call this, the agenda packet, I guess is what it is. Sorry.
That's fine.
We actually, for a rural county like us, we actually did really, really well, especially given the amount of ambulances that we have within our service. So we're pretty proud, and we're pretty excited that you guys are able to share that with us. So
How many ambulances do you have in service?
we have 4 at peak times, 3 at non-peak times.
Thought that was interesting to see in comparable counties, Davie and Stokes, that they have 5,
Which with the call volume
3 or 4
a little
stations.
higher.
So, you all doing good, keep up with them.
Yep. So we're pretty excited about it, and as you see that there's most of the other counties are much bigger, like Durham and Wake, that have that ability, whereas we're a little rural with our 30, 45 minutes, sometimes an hour transport time. So we're really excited to get this award. So.
And if I may add, only 55% of the agencies in the nation received the plus metric for 2017. It was our first year collecting that metric, and only 55%. So they're a handful of elite people that got that plus metric. There's only 28 EMS agencies in North Carolina, 78 in the Mid-Atlantic affiliate, which is the affiliate I cover. So 55% is one of 55%.
We're going for gold next year.
Congratulations, thank you.
We commend you, and I'm sure the people of Person County would say, keep up the good work.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you. At this time, we're going to move into the public hearing portion of the meeting. There's a request. Do I need to vote to open the public hearing? Okay. At this time, is there any discussion for the public hearing? If not, would,
I'll make a motion to open.
thank you so much. Any further discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? Okay. The request from Woodsdale Farm LLC for a special use permit for a solar farm, tax map A58, parcel 12, Woodsdale Township, owned by Lindsay and John Wagstaff. This is a quasi-judicial zoning decision whereby witnesses are to be sworn in and subject to cross-examination, no ex parte communication, and requirement findings of fact. Okay, all those who are planning on presenting testimony, if you would step up, please, in front of near the podium. I state your name.
I, Thomas Burkman,
Do solemnly swear
do solemnly swear
that I will tell the truth,
that I will tell the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
the whole truth, and nothing but the truth,
as testimony offered in a public hearing
as testimony offered in a public hearing
for a request from Woodsdale Farm LLC
for a request from Woodsdale Farm LLC
for a special use permit
for a special use permit
for a solar farm,
for a solar farm,
tax map A58,
tax map A58,
parcel 12,
parcel 12,
Woodsdale Township,
Woodsdale Township,
owned by Lindsay and John Wagstaff.
owned by Lindsay and John Wagstaff.
Thank you. Ms. Oakley?
Waiting for my presentation.
Yep.
Good
There it
morning.
is.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners. It's my pleasure to be here before you this morning. I would like to state for the record that all zoning ordinance and state statutes have been met for the requirement to hold this public hearing. I'm gonna feel a little awkward without the clicker, so please bear with me here. The special use permit request that you have before you tonight, or this morning, is for a proposed solar farm. And I have the site plan on the screen, beside you and in front of you. The property consists of 594 acres, and the solar company plans on leasing 15.75 acres out of the proposed solar farm. And you can kind of see the site plan was overlaid on an aerial map, so you can see Woodsdale Farm off to the right, and the proposed site plan is within the dark hashed area. There is an existing 30-acre solar farm on the property to the south of the proposed facility, which was approved in 2013. The remainder of the acreage is used as woodland and farmland with farm buildings and a tenant house, which is kind of hard to see, but it is toward the southern portion of the property, the tenant house and the farmland. The site is zoned RC, which is rural conservation, and the proposed solar farm requires the issuance of a special use permit by the board. So here's a more detailed picture of the site plan, which you should have in your packet. The solar farm will contain rows of photovoltaic cell panels, also known as PV cell panels, and they're mounted on posts which are set in the ground individually. The plan depicts 24,348 solar panels located on 1,036 racks, and each panel has 155 watt capacity. So on the bottom picture, you can see an actual rack with a solar panel on the bottom left corner. So you're looking at approximately 1,000 of those racks proposed on the site. The property is not located within a FEMA flood hazard area. It is located within the Roanoke Watershed Basin, which currently has no regulations that apply to Person County. The site will not require well or septic system, and the use will be unmanned and only visited periodically for routine maintenance. Examples of solar farms, which probably look familiar to you. The solar farm on the left is the one at the Person County Airport, and the two on the right are on Highway 501 heading north towards Mayo Lake. Those are some examples in the county already. Person County Comprehensive Plan. This site falls within the suburban residential classification under the Person County Land Use Plan's future land use map. It includes both residential uses and non-residential uses such as commercial, office, industrial, public institutional uses also. Locational criteria for non-residential uses include land uses that would include frontage to a state highway or a secondary road, with proximity to similar uses and spatial separation for non-compatible uses such as existing residential developments. In reviewing this site plan, staff came up with 7 proposed recommended conditions. Number 1, that the applicant is to obtain a driveway permit from NCDOT. A copy of the permit is to be given to the planning and zoning staff prior to the issuance of a zoning permit. 2, that the applicant is to obtain erosion and sedimentation control plan. A copy of the approved plan and the approval letter is to be given to the planning and zoning department prior to the issuance of a zoning permit. 3, a final as-built is to be submitted to the Planning and Zoning Department prior to the issuance of a certificate of occupancy. 4, access to the site is to be a minimum of 20 feet in width. Parking is to accommodate 2 vehicles, each space being 9 by 18, and a turnaround with a minimum of 70 feet, which includes driving services for emergency vehicles, and this is depicted on the site plan. 5, the applicant is to obtain all federal, state, and local permits that are required. 6, the applicant is to meet all conditions of the Person County zoning ordinance. And 7, the applicant will need to obtain a zoning permit and building permit from Person County prior to any construction on the site. The planning board did hear this case last week at their May 11th, 2017 meeting, and the board voted unanimously 5-0 to approve the special use permit application for the proposed solar farm with the 7 conditions that were recommended by planning staff. The board also included 2 additional conditions, which are to read: number 1, the applicant must adhere to all signage requirements listed on note 16 on the site plan. And number 2, the applicant shall provide to the Planning and Zoning Department a decommissioning plan in the event that the facility ceases to produce energy on a continuous basis for 12 months. That decommissioning plan will require the solar company to return the site to its previous condition prior to the installation of the solar farm. And the applicant did agree at the planning board meeting to both of those additional conditions. The board also stated that the special use permit met all 4 findings of fact, which are listed in section 74.4 of the zoning ordinance, and that the application was in keeping with the comprehensive plan. When reviewing this application, the board will need to address the findings of fact that are listed in section 74.4 of the zoning ordinance, which I have on the screen in front of you, and also state whether or not this proposal is in keeping with the comprehensive plan. If you have any questions of me at this time, I'd be happy to answer them.
Any questions?
Something like this, is it prelim, when they bring this in, is it already, who's gonna buy the power from them? Is it Duke or Piedmont?
My understanding would be Duke, but that might be a question for the applicant.
So is that something that has to be approved by them before it comes to the planning board, or, so it's already?
The Utilities Commission sets up the guidelines on how much Duke Energy has to buy and from whom. And so it's already been approved through the Utilities Commission before it gets to this point. Typically. Any questions? Okay. We have 3 proponents. If you would, Mr. Terrell, if you'll step up and state your name and your address, please.
Thank you, Chairman Kendrick. I'm Tom Terrell, 300 North Green Street in Greensboro. I'm proud to be here in Person County to represent Strata Solar. And the answer to Mr. Jeffers' question is yes, this already has been approved by the North Carolina Utilities Commission, and Duke Energy will purchase the power. To keep this moving a little bit more quickly, we did prepare a PowerPoint. I'd like to just scroll through that, and I think that is it. I'm sorry. Okay. Some of you may not know that North Carolina right now is one of the leading states in the country in the growth of solar. It's a huge investment so far in North Carolina, $3 billion. And you may not know that by number of farms, Person County is one of the leading counties in North Carolina for moving forward with this technology. Strata Solar, who we represent today, is #1 in the Southeast for the production of these facilities. We are the 3rd largest developer of solar in the United States. And where Strata has been, they've developed a reputation for doing things right by that local community. One 5-megawatt farm represents $8 to $10 million in income or investment for the county, and about $22,000 to $25,000 per year in taxes, which is substantially more than an equivalent sized farm that would just be producing crops of some sort. One of the best things about solar is that it is saving family farms. It's happening all across North Carolina. It's enabling families to keep the land in the family without having to sell it for a subdivision or something like that. I'm going to address standard number 4 first, that it's harmonious with the surrounding area and conforms with the comprehensive plan. First, this is an RC district. RC is a very functional, practical district in your county. We appreciate it. It really helps companies coming in to have something like the RC district. I've listed here the number of uses permitted by right in that district, and it includes all sorts of things from marinas to grocery stores to car washes, and any manufacturing use if it has an SUP. The reason an SUP in this case would create harmony with the area is that this is unlike, for example, a Home Depot. This is completely dark at night, 100%. There are no exterior lights in these facilities. They don't have any light emanating from them. You can't hear them. If you go inside the facility, you can hear a hum. If you're close enough to an inverter, it may sound like a humming air conditioner, but once you get to the boundary, you can't hear these things. No dust, they don't use water, they don't tax aquifers. Typically, they're not visible when there's vegetation, and they just don't produce cars. One single-family home produces more cars in a day than a solar farm would produce really in 2 months. This is to illustrate what these are. These posts that you see right here are just driven into the ground, and when it's time to come remove these, any of you who, like me, have driven tractors, you just take the hydraulic arms on the back of a standard mid-sized tractor, and you can pull them back up. It's like a fence post. They're there for 30 years. You can recycle the materials, and when the facility is removed, it just goes right back to pasture land. So the farm has been retained as a farm. Even the framing is very basic. It's very simple. It can be removed. It's recyclable. These things are very easy to buffer. They're low to the ground. They don't reflect light so much as they absorb light. They're friendly to motorists. They look like agricultural buildings in many respects. I've put a couple of photographs here of these buildings to show you that they're, by design, they look like something you might see there. These are chicken farms. I actually took this photograph on Highway 74 going through Robeson County. They look similar in appearance to a solar farm. We were asked about decommissioning last Thursday by the planning board, and I'm very pleased to offer this condition. We have to provide that to Ms. Oakley, but what a decommissioning plan does is to assure you, the county, it's built in as a permit requirement. It assures you that when this leases up, or when Strata for some reason were to stop using it to produce power, that this facility has to be removed. And as I said before, it is not a complicated process. It does conform with the comprehensive plan. Ms. Oakley put up some information previously. I add these 4 points, 3 goals that show how a solar farm conforms with the plan that you have adopted for Person County. But the most important thing perhaps is the land use map itself. It says this area where this farm is located is for non-residential uses, as this is, that don't require sewer. It makes it a perfect use by the land use map. And then that takes us through. I'm glad to answer any questions about harmony or your comprehensive plan before we move on to standard number 3.
In your decommissioning process, is Strata going to decommission and remove, or is the landowner?
No, Strata is responsible for that. It is a double protection. It's in the landlord's lease as to the circumstances under which the facility has to be removed, but certainly at the end of the lease.
Okay.
But that always remains Strata's responsibility.
Okay, in the event that 25 or 30 years from now that Strata is supposed to decommission, how is it set up that in the event that possibly Strata go bankrupt and is no longer viable, are they setting aside funds for decommissions?
Strata does not set aside funds for decommissioning. I will add that Strata is probably, I don't think there's really any doubt, it's one of the most well-capitalized of all solar facilities in the country. They are the fastest growing solar facility. They run themselves extremely conservatively. They're not publicly owned, they're privately owned. And if there were a circumstance where they went bankrupt, I'll turn to Jim. You can actually get almost as much money, I think, from the recycling.
I was gonna say the salvage value is greater.
It's not as greater. So somebody could step in and, you know, remove the materials, assume ownership, and sell them, and what you would get would exceed the cost.
I would contend that when I was 10 years old, I didn't think GM would take money from taxpayers either to keep them viable.
We understand that.
So,
We understand. Probably the best answer is the ultimate fallback is if somebody were to have to take over, the assets are substantial and always, they have had over the last decades, these materials have had recyclable value. We believe that the recyclable value will go up over time.
any other questions?
I'd like to introduce then Mr. Rich Kirkland. Mr. Kirkland is an appraiser, an outstanding appraiser from Raleigh. He has studied numerous solar facilities, and he will explain why solar farms have not been shown to have any impact on the value of adjoining properties.
Please state your name and your address, please.
Richard Kirkland. My address is 9408 Northfield Court, Raleigh. I'm a commercial appraiser. I've been appraising the area for 20 years. I've also received my MAI through the Appraisal Institute. Regularly appraise agricultural, residential land, and commercial properties. Also do impact study analysis, which is what I've looked at here for this case. I've been looking at solar farms and impact on adjoining property values for the last 6 years. Of that time, I've looked at over 300 solar farm sites, mostly in North Carolina, predominantly across North Carolina, but I've also looked at sites in Virginia, South Carolina, and a number of other states. What I've been doing in that process is I've been compiling data, looking at what properties are around solar farms and looking at the characteristics of solar farms to figure out whether or not this is a harmonious location. And also I've been looking for matched pairs to look to see if there is an impact on property value. What I found is that, especially just focusing on data for across North Carolina, is that solar farms are predominantly located in places where you have agricultural properties meeting residential. You have agricultural use is the predominant use if you look at the adjoining properties by acreage. If you look at the adjoining properties by parcels, the most common use is residential. It really is this area where you're getting a certain amount of transition because you need open space for the solar farms to be put in place, but you also need the infrastructure and people to use that power once it gets put out there. This location is a very typical location where I'd see solar farms. There is a mix of agricultural, residential uses. Again, if I look at it by acreage, most common use is agriculture. If I look at it by parcels, it's residential. And again, the properties already has a solar farm existent on this parent tract. So it's my professional opinion, this is a harmonious location. This is very typical for what I see solar farms located. Again, in the study that I assume you've got copies of in your package, you can see that the closest adjoining home is over 500 feet away. The average distance is over 3,000 feet away. Matched pairs that I'm looking at show homes as close as 150 feet away with an average of about 280, 300 feet. So the distance to homes in this case is significantly greater than what I typically see across the state. But focusing back to matched pairs, looking at impact, I've looked at a number of sites where there have been sales after solar farms are in there. A match pair study looks at home sales that have happened next to a solar farm or land sales. I've looked at both. And you compare those to similar or identical properties that are not adjoining a solar farm to measure for an impact. I found over 12 different solar farms that I've found multiple matched pairs I can look at through those that show that there's no impact on property value. There's specifically, there's a site in Goldsboro that I cite frequently because it really is a very clean set. It's really a textbook example of a matched pair. There was a subdivision going in before a solar farm was announced. So there's home sales that happened in this neighborhood before the solar farm came in or anyone knew anything about it. After the solar farm was put in, homes continue to be sold. When you compare properties in that development before and after the solar farm, same size, same style home sells for the same price per square foot. After the solar farm goes in, you can look at identical floor plans selling adjoining the property, adjoining the solar farm, or down the street not adjoining it. Identical floor plan sells for the same price per square foot. The only reason I don't talk about the exact same floor plan before and after is because they actually started building larger homes after the solar farm was put in place. So again, it certainly didn't hurt the trend for that neighborhood. Talked with the builder developer team, home was sold out as quickly as they had originally planned for this neighborhood. It's completely sold out, and so it didn't affect how quickly homes sold either. There's been resales in there since that subdivision was complete. Property backs up to the solar farm. It sold, again, same price as adjoining our nearby homes, same floor plans, same price. 2.5 years later, it had sold with appreciation typical for the neighborhood. So again, it still showed appreciation over time. So all the different ways I could look at value, this one neighborhood really shows a great example of that there is no impact on property value. Also, specifically for this site, I would point out that I actually have a matched pair that I've been citing for a couple of years now off of Woodsdale Road. There's a sale of some land right near this solar farm that happened, and again, it sold for prices very typical to nearby land sales. So again, even here in Roxborough, looking at this specific site, I found no impact from that solar farm right there. So it's my professional opinion, this proposed solar farm is going to have no impact on adjoining property values. And again, then this is going to be harmonious use. I'd be happy to answer questions or go into greater detail if you need.
Any questions of Mr. Kirkland? Hearing none, Jim Haley.
Hi, my name is Jim Haley. Address is 50101 Governor's Drive, Chapel Hill, North Carolina 27510. I've got a few slides that I guess when they come up, I'll go through them, but I can get started on the first one, which is just generally talking about the farm will not endanger public safety. And to go through that, just want to talk a little bit about initially how solar panels work. Like I said, on a very sort of high-level description, the sun emits sunlight, photons. Those photons actually displace an electron in the thin metal film that's in the solar panel. That electron goes into a wire, produces electricity. Really fairly basic. All right, thank you. Sorry. So Tom discussed this a little bit, but once the solar farm is constructed, there'll be very little traffic going to the solar farm. I usually say about 24 trips per year is what we kind of estimate. It's an unmanned facility. There's no emissions. There's no odor. There's no need for septic or any services from the county. No need for sewer or water. Not a cause of sedimentation. You saw some of the pictures. Once it gets constructed, it's going to be a sort of a grassy sort of turf type field once it's built. They're silent. During the day, if you walk right up to to an inverter, you might hear a hum like an air conditioner. At the fence line, you won't hear it. The same with EMF. It's at the fence line, EMF has been measured at 0 near the inverters. You might experience some EMF. Similar to what you get from large power lines, but that's just right in the facility. Again, at the perimeter of the facility, that's pretty much it's been measured at 0. As far as the panels go, a question came up during planning, you know, what's in the panels? Is it toxic? Does it pose a hazard to human health? And the panels have a metal in them, cadmium, and that cadmium is a very thin film that's sandwiched between two pieces of glass. And to test the toxicity, what they do is they do a test called a T-clip test. It's a toxicity characteristic leachate procedure. It's an EPA test they can use on a number of different materials, not just solar panels. But they crush the solar panels up, they run an acid through the solar panels, and then they test that liquid that comes out to see if there's any metal in there. And it's you know, below detection limits, and it passed that T-clip test. And so, you know, in the event that those do get into the environment, they get broken, and someone puts acid on them, that, you know, we're confident that that metal substance isn't going to leak out. Furthermore, First Solar, for their panels, they've got a recycling program, and with that recycling program, you know, they expect 99% of their panels, if they're not being used to generate power, they're going to go back to their recycling facility, and they're going to harvest that cadmium telluride back out of their panels and reuse it. So with that robust recycling program, we don't see any issue with this getting into the environment. The farms don't have any effect on wildlife. Like I said, they're fairly benign use. Once the farm is built, it sits there at night, doesn't work at all. It's just sitting there. It's dark, there's no lights at night. We have a monitoring center at Strata, and this is primarily for performance, but we can see all of our solar farms. If we have a panel go down or an inverter go down, sends us a signal. We can dispatch some technicians to go see what's going on with that. That's primarily because folks we have who've invested money in these want to see them working. And what that does, it gives us eyes on our solar farms and make sure that we know that they're working properly. Solar is you know, supported. To me, it's you know, it's clean energy. It's something I think that Person County can be proud of. That Person County is contributing to clean energy. EPA supports it. It's not really a new technology. We've seen a rise in it lately, and it's really because the technology has gotten cheaper and better, and it's actually cost effective now to do solar, where in the past it wasn't. That's why we're seeing more of it, but it's been around for over 50 years. We accept all the permit conditions. We're going to get our NCDOT permits, our NCDEQ permits, and make sure that we have all that in place before we build the farm. Also, the asphalt turnaround for emergency vehicles, that's already been designed into the site plan. And we just want to say thank you. We're grateful to be here in Person County. We've done some work here before, and we'd like your support, and also from the Wagstaff family, they would like your support as well. And I'd be happy to answer any questions, or if you have any questions from anyone in our group.
Any questions for Mr. Haley? Any questions or comments for the group? I'd just like to speak with Ms. Oakley and say, moving forward, we've seen the amount of cost associated with just getting rid of CRT screens in Person County and our MRF Center. And so I would like to, not for this project because it's gotten to this point, but have our planning and zoning people look at not only the removal after the facilities are done, but the possibility of setting aside fees to assure that the county is not, and the county taxpayers are not left holding the bill if for some reason the company that installs it and agrees to take it out is not viable at the end of the term of the contract. So my only comment. Any other comments? Hearing none, we come out of closed public hearing.
Motion to come out of closed session.
Public hearing.
Public hearing.
Any discussion? All in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Out of open session. Excuse me, public hearing. We'll get this right before it's over with. Item number 3, consideration to grant or deny the request from Woodsdale Farm LLC for the special use permit. Is there any discussion, or is there something pleasure of the board to move forward?
Motion to approve with the recommendations of the planning board.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor of approving the request, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Ayes have it. It's approved. At this time, we'll move into our public comment period. Ms. Frances Blaylock, if you would step up to the mic, and we have 3 people, so approximately 3 minutes apiece. Ms. Blaylock, name and address, please.
Frances Blaylock, 1504 Mount Tourism Road. Got 3 things I'd like to bring up, and I hope I can do it in 3 minutes.
We'll be liberal. Go ahead.
Okay, prior to the big rain that we had, I met a land application truck from Cinnabon coming down Antioch Church Road. And I didn't think anything about it at the time because I know land application of biosolids goes on in our county. So a few days after that, we had the torrential rains, which we had probably 6, 7, 8 inches of rain in the county. So knowing that that's in our area, and I wanted to know where these applications were being applied. So I called Harold Kelly, and he put me in touch with Tony Gallagher in at Dana. Talked with him, and my major question that I got from him and that I want to pass to you is that if land application is going on beside anybody's farm, they don't have to let you know that. And you know what I'm talking about? I'm talking about biosolids, that's sludge. And you don't have to be told, because if they have the proper papers have been filed and they have the proper setbacks and buffers, you will never know. But it concerned me because of the huge amount of rain that came, so I looked into it. So I was then directed to Rick Bolick, and I received an email from him, and he said, our staff spoke with Synagro today regarding your complaint. And they told us that they have been land applying residuals for the city of Durham, coming from Durham now, folks, to the fields on Old Allensville Road recently, but they have done the required signage. The current state rules that residual applications prohibit land application during and until 24 hours after a significant rain, but there are no rules prohibiting any application of residuals prior to a rain event. Setback buffers and restrictions on field slopes are designed to help prevent runoff from occurring. And I'm just disturbed by that because if somebody land applies next to me, I want to know, because there are a lot of pathogens and things that are not gleaned out of that stuff. And so I just wanted the public to know and wanted you to know about this. The next thing, I said to you recently, the leachate aerolization material. And I hope all of you have read it. I know Mr. Powell, we've talked about it. And this morning I looked up to see what the status of this particular bill is. It's HB 576, and it seemed like it may have passed through the House. But this would be a terrible, terrible thing to happen for this county if this landfill remains here. This aerolization can be, they take the leachate, instead of bringing it over to the waste treatment plant and treating it there, they will spray it into the air at 100 miles an hour, and the fine particles will drift off into the air, and the heaviest stuff will fall to the landfill, hopefully. But Brooks Rainey Pearson said in discussion here, she said that mist could travel up to 3 miles, and that landfill is not 3 miles long. And Jeff Collins erroneously claimed the foothills are successfully using this process, but DEQ says none of this is happening just yet. And this has not been happening, but our landfill has, it says has gotten permit to do this, but it's not happening yet. So keep your eye on this. This is a bad thing to happen, so. Then the last thing, I'm sorry, Mr. Kendrick, but I was disappointed in what was your quote that was in the paper. It says, I just thought after all this time you get it. You said, I am disappointed that we're treating a legal, licensed and permitted business different than we would other businesses in our county. If you change the name and the business model to anything different, residents would be appalled, but the name is Republic, and solid waste has a negative stigma. A dump, we don't care what you name it. You could call it Rose for all I know, but that is still a polluter, and it stinks, it smells. The name doesn't matter. What matters is what kind of business you want to inflict on some of the citizens. People will indeed feel the impact, but you want the impact to be felt by some citizens differently. Which is more important, the dump or your constituents? You want us to be treating all businesses the same, but you won't treat us the same. I want you to look at this bundle of papers. 74 pages from 1999, a public hearing on the expansion of the landfill. This is a hard copy of the landfill hearing. This has gone on year after year after year. 1999, 2002, I think, 2005, 2007, 2009, and here it is again, 2016, 17. And our only respite was during the time that I served on this board. And as a leader of our commission board, you should not advocate putting another Band-Aid on this eternal problem. We can go out here, we can buy ballparks, and we can do all kinds of things for recreation. Yet this problem has been kicked down the road, down the road, down the road. And here again, we want to do the same thing again. It's been 20 years and it keeps rearing its ugly, smelly head because of poor decisions from this board. You weren't on the board when it started. A few of you were, but this is no way to solve a problem. If you haven't done so, I would ask you to read again the subtitled landfill folder that I gave you, and then let's get the dollar signs out of our eyes, and let's use wisdom, and let's lead this board to solve the landfill problem once and for all. And I know it's going to be hard work, so just do the hard work. Today I want to put in the record the only good solution that I can think of, and that is to open the transfer station. Give people an option to take it to the transfer station or take it to Granville County. Then establish a landfill fund in the budget and begin setting aside funds to finance building our own facility down the road. Then we can be done with it once and for all. And if we must, then share the grief with everyone else with a penny increase in the taxes. You should represent the citizens and not the dump. People in Person County expect that of you. Person County Board of Commissioners does not belong to you. It's a vehicle whose main purpose is to protect the citizens. And if you can't do the job, then step back and let someone do it who can. Thank you very much.
Miss Betty Boyle.
Got my cane, excuse me. I'm Betty Blaylock, 144 Terza Ridge, Rougemont, and that's in Person County, by the way. First I want, well, I hope this doesn't take my time. It should be 5 minutes each, right? I want to thank...
Being liberal. Go right ahead.
Thank you. You do something right, okay?
I get it right every now and then. Just ask my wife.
Yeah. Okay. If you'd been at my house last night, you wouldn't have. I got a call late last night. They were four-wheeling over there. They were shooting firecrackers, or something was blowing up at the landfill. I don't know which. We don't call them anymore, okay? So I'm going to call you. I'm not going to be like one of the ladies and put you on. Every time she smells it, she sends a telephone call to you. First of all, I want to thank those people with the solar industry. You know, God gave us the first solar industry. God gave us it. We're finally, after how many years? We don't know how many years, whether you're using it. Now, it has a few, but it has nothing compared to the pollution and the problems that we're having with this Republic Industries or the dump. Now, the city was concerned, according to the paper, about having to pay for garbage pickup. I live a half a mile from it, and I have to pay for my garbage picked up. I pay my taxes, but I still have to pay for garbage. Not only that, they add a charge for fuel added on to the garbage bill. So not the Clayton and Hurdle, I'll go on and name them. I don't think they do, but I don't know. But I have to pay for mine. I don't know why they shouldn't pay for theirs. You say, well, they pay both taxes. Well, they have a lot more than I do. They don't have to drive 10 miles or wait till the EMT people try to find you, you know. And I had an uncle to die because of that problem that came up with the last, because they didn't ever get there. They finally put him in a car and took him to Durham because it was closer to live on the edge of the county. But anyway, the city's concerned about having to pay for that. And they're also concerned about carbon footprint. You know, they don't get it maybe. Maybe I should meet with the city council and also you all to let you know. I'm concerned about carbon footprint. But the 25 trucks a week that the city sends down there, now that's what the trucks tell me, because you know they spend 2 hours at lunch over at that little country store. And they don't know who we are, so they'll answer questions, okay? That's how much for lunch. Cut their lunch time, and then they won't have to work overtime, okay? And I'm not criticizing them. You know, they're hungry, and that's a place to eat, and that's fine. But you're talking just 25 trucks a week from them, and the same trucks that come for local garbage, you know, the county garbage that people hire, same number of trucks. But you're cutting out 50 trucks every half a day. You're cutting out that many. So yes, the carbon footprint, and you know what? They come through the city, all the time. They come from Virginia, they come on Leesburg Road, they come on the Danville Road, maybe the same thing, I don't know. They come on out of 49, out of Alamance. Since day one, they've been coming bringing ash from Alamance County. And they're coming out of that. I have a couple of people from 49 say, well, they come back here all the time. Well, I don't think they're talking not the local garbage trucks, okay? And they come, somebody has counted the ones. We had a person in for 2 or 3 years, she would go every now and then and sit on the front porch right across from the entrance, and she would write down the trucks, and we've got those numbers too, by the way, early on. I mean, it's 20 times what you even see now. I mean, not now, but what would be if you only had local trash, including the city. So the carbon footprint is going to go way down because it comes down Madison Boulevard. I meet them all the time when I come. And down Oxford Road. In fact, now they're bringing tankers. I wonder if they're not already bringing more than what you think, because now I keep meeting a lot of tanker trucks going down there. And so they're going down there with something. And and you talk about disturbing. Last night was one thing. Dogs have been things. At one time they let out wild boars down there until somebody threatened to kill one and put it up on the courthouse steps. I don't think they're doing that anymore. They have hunters to come. I talked with a young African American long-term resident. I grew up with them, and some of the children have built nice homes there right down below me toward there. And one of them came over hunting out of Greensboro that works for Republic and handed him his card, trying to make friends with them. But we've asked him, don't shoot this way. Don't shoot. I've lost 2 windows from hunting. One was a $1,500 window. The others were basement ones, more than that. So there is a danger there. But just think of how fewer trucks. I mean, supposed to build a road from Virginia, and I don't know why, double 4-lane to South Boston. Nothing there excuse me if you're from South Boston, you know, it's a nice little town. But there's no reason. Somebody said go to 85. Well, you can go to 85 through South Boston. Why did you build that? To bypass Madison Boulevard. Guess what? It doesn't bypass Madison Boulevard. They're still coming down, coming through town. When they come from Oxford and coming back, when they come back there, they can't go through 158. They've got to cut through 501, cut down, come down by the, what's the name of the restaurant there? By the dollar store and the carpet one. That's how they come, because they can't get under the underpass, most of the big trucks. So they're coming from all over. They come down the old Durham roads. They want to take a little bit of a shortcut, then cut down Oxford Road. But coming from the other way, it's phenomenal. And we followed them. We know where they're coming from. And but they lie about it, so we don't bother with them anymore. But House Bill 576, spraying feces 100 feet, and it all falling with all its poisons. And if you think they are poisonous, smell it sometime, okay? I'm sorry to be so direct, but that's how you have to be with people who don't seem to get it. Now, thanks again for the solar thing, because at least it's not emitting poisons, and they tell how one thing that is dangerous, they tell how they recapture it and how it's done. Now I want to read you something, and then I'll close with that. It's not all what I wanted to say, but I was going to read you all my people who've got cancer down on my area, in the area. I was going to read you their initials. I can do that. We've been asked to pray for people, so I've got those. And I can look up death certificates and see what they died of, the ones we know that died from stuff. Heart, whatever. And I've got lots of articles to tell you about it. But this is something that came from the county records. And this was when we complained to you all about the PCBs being brought down there. And then we came up to get pool records to see what. And this was in the record. It's done by, I don't know if it's the county manager, but it's got 2 people's names that work for the county on it with their numbers. And here's what he said. In last Tuesday's Herald Sun newspaper, a letter to the editor from Drew Eisenhower, he's a bigwig with Republic, okay, was printed. It admitted that Republic Services of North Carolina, LLC, was bringing loads of soil from Wake to the landfill in Person County. I talked to, this is a county person, I talked to Mr. Eisenhower before the public hearing last Tuesday here in the auditorium. I questioned an inconsistency in his letter. He put me off by saying he would explain the apparent inconsistency in more detail during his testimony at the hearing. In fact, all he did was read the significant parts of the letter that he had sent to the newspaper. The letter stated that soil being brought to the landfill contained from 0.104 to 0.139 ppm of PCBs. The inconsistency in that letter also said that soils being picked up contained PCBs at concentrations ranging of slightly above EP action levels. Action levels of 49 ppm, or about 400 times what they said was brought to the landfill. But you know what? He said, so the inescapable conclusion one must come to is that the action level soil was being diluted with clean soil, some higher, some whatever. But we followed them. We know they didn't dilute anything. Is this legal? He said. Probably not. And this would explain why members of PC Pride had to go to extreme lengths to eventually discover where the trucks were coming from. There are obviously other questions and ramifications to this. Then guess what he put in here? This is printed in your county records here. But for the time being, I would like to leave it here. I would like to leave it here for the time being. And it stayed there all these years. And not this necessarily all this board, never did a thing about it. And when we told the state, they said, we found them. We found them many times. He said, but your county commissioners can do something about it. But you see what it did? Stay right here in your files, in your county files. Nothing was ever done. Now, That's what you think of us. That's what you think of your county people. Not you, but you, yes, a couple of you, yes. You don't give a rat's, you know what, about what we're subjected to. And if they were able to aerate, blow this stuff in the air, it'll be even worse. Because they're not bringing just feces down there. Loads and loads of it. You might as well call it what it is. I could use the dirty name for it, but I won't. Thank you.
Tanya Evans.
Good morning. My name is Tanya Evans. I'm with Duke Energy. I also live in Timberlake here in Person County. I wanted to come to you this morning to talk to you about a resolution that's on your agenda for, I think it's a couple points down, regarding providing permanent water lines and solutions to residents near our coal ash basins. I understand that you have heard from a few of our neighbors, of our plant neighbors, and I wanted to clear up some misconceptions and maybe some misunderstanding, to provide some clarity for you regarding our plans. As you know, the Coal Ash Management Act requires us to provide a permanent water solution to neighbors within a half-mile radius of the plant. It also requires that we do this before October of 2018. So immediately we began doing a study about the possibilities of whether you extend a municipal water line, you offer filtration systems, or community wells. And part of that included a study, a very extensive engineering study done by Dewberry and Associates to understand three main things. One is the ability for lines to provide high-quality water to residents. The other is the location of the nearest public water line. And the third is the ability to maintain or comply with the CAMA deadline of October 2018. We did a number of studies and worked with a company called Dewberry. And Dewberry has determined that based on the distance to the most closest water line, and the ability for the city to provide high quality water because of that distance, that the best option is to provide a whole home filtration system as a choice or as an option for those residents. The water quality, if you'll allow me for just a minute, the water quality for the water, if we were to bring it from the city of Roxborough, and the nearest line is about 10 miles away, and the water quality by then gets very old. It's about 7 to 8 days old, which is a reflection of the quality of the water. It would entail a regular flushing of the system in order to meet national drinking water regulations, and the city would also have to continually test and monitor that and add additional infrastructure to ensure that that water meets federal drinking water standards along with the state. So in addition to that, the cost is often brought up as the reason why we're not doing that, which it certainly comes into play, but it is not the driving factor. The cost to provide municipal water line extensions to those residents is at about $131,000 per household, which far exceeds the DEQ standard of $35,000 per household. So the cost is significant, especially as you consider the fact that we would not be able to maintain water quality by extending those lines. In addition, it's important to know, and we have been communicating with our residents through information sessions, mailings. There's a phone number you can call. There's an email address you can send questions to that we respond to. But there's important information about the type of system that we are providing. It's an ion filtration system. This is not something you get off the shelf at Walmart or even at Home Depot or Lowe's. It is a very sophisticated system that requires us to go in and test the existing wells, understand where they are, regulate or the system specific for those particular wells to ensure that these standards are met and that the water quality is meets all state and federal regulations. These systems are valued between $10,000 and $15,000 per system. That doesn't include installation costs, and the ongoing maintenance is between $1,000 and $3,000 a year. So it is a significant investment. And as far as the schedule is concerned, again, the law requires us to provide these permanent water solutions to our neighbors by October 2018. And in order to be able to install and construct those lines, it would push us out until September of 2019 by all of our estimates at this point. So we would not be able to comply with the law in terms of the deadline as well. So as you can see, there are a number of factors that went into understanding and studying the best solution for our neighbors. And I wanted to provide a little bit of clarity on that and help you understand how we came to that decision. I know that I have sent this information to you before, but I wanted to stand up here in front and again let you know about that. I also wanted to point out that, again, we've done a number of studies, and we continue to study the water around our plants and the neighbor wells. We have installed hundreds of monitoring wells around our ash basins. And there's a study that's recently been done by Duke University, and study after study, and the data continues to come in, and it's very clear that our ash basins are not impacting our neighbors' wells. Nonetheless, we are committed to providing these permanent water solutions to our neighbors, and I wanted to provide some clarity on how we came about that decision, and that it was based on ensuring water quality first and foremost, doing it in a cost-efficient manner, and then being able to meet the timeline required by the law. So I wanted to provide that to you as you consider the resolution coming before you. Thank you.
All right, that concludes our informal comments. Item number 4, discussion and adjustment, approval of the consent agenda. Is there any discussion or adjustments of the consent agenda? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of the board?
Move for approval.
Motion is on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor of approval, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? Consent agenda passes. New business, item number 5, resolution of support for a permanent clean water solution. Commissioner Jefferson.
Well, I just heard what Ms. Evans said, and Ms. Evans is here to represent Duke, and I'm here to represent the citizens of Person County, which include the Mill Hill community. I think it's interesting to say once a study says one thing, but you provide water and bottled water. I mean, that's kind of hard for me as a resident to live out there. Someone tells me there's nothing wrong with my water, but all of a sudden there's water on my front porch given to me by Duke Energy. So you obviously could imagine the concern they have out there. I'm not even going to get into, I'm not an appraiser or anything like that of property, but I can tell you of several homes that are out there that are still for sale, have been for quite some time now. I'm sure due to concern of what type of water will you have. And I even got a buddy of mine who had pretty much settled on a lot right across from his mother's home, going to put a house and everything, and now that's up in smoke because he doesn't know what type of quality of water that he would have. I read the comments in the paper about the water quality come from the city and all that, but I don't know, has a survey been done to see how many citizens would tap on if we ran a line by them? I know if it came down more than volume, I sure would tap on. But, I mean, you know, we're here to represent those citizens. We heard from them. I don't know if we found out if it was factual that we are one of 3 sites that will not receive some type of municipal water. But if that's true, I think that's a shame that we couldn't find some way to provide for the Hyco and the Mayo residences and Moose Creek or whatever the other facility was, like we've done in other counties. So I offer this resolution of support, and I hope that if it passes, that it's sent to our state representatives, to our city council, as well as to the governor. I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, there's a motion on the table. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I will make a comment as the environmental health specialist for all of the years. If you can, anytime you can get city water versus something else, now there may be reasons that they can't do that. I'm not going to argue that point at all, but my point is that if there's any possibility to get municipal water versus a filtration type system, then I think that would be, I can see why the residents want that.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the table. All in favor of motion of resolution of support, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Motion doesn't carry. Item number 6, letter of support for required local matches and other contributions for non-highway draft. Mr. Sheet.
Morning, Commissioners. For about 2 or 3 years now, the Airport Commission, in conjunction with our consulting firm Talbot Bright out of Wilmington, have been working with the DOA and the FAA as far as an airport extension or extending our runway. Basically, we're almost to the point of getting our new master plan approved. The master plan basically supports an additional runway length of 800 feet, which would bring our total runway to 6,805 feet. The FAA has supported, is supporting our need for an additional runway. Additional runway would be positive in terms of economic development. It should also be a boost for the cargo activity at the airport. And it should have a positive impact on fuel sales, because now we see planes come in that fail to take fuel on because they are worried about their takeoff length. So they are, not taking fuel when they could have. Plus, it would be a very attractive for corporate aircraft. So as we proceeded through the request of getting support for this runway extension, the NCDOT STIP funding has allocated $11,230,000 in a grant for this reason, and this funding goes before the Transportation Board for a vote around June the 30th of next month. In acceptance, or in order for us to be considered for this grant, we have to provide the commitment to a 10% match. That 10% match would be $1.123,000. The subject letter that we have to turn in is attached in your packet. The county for several years now has been allocating $200,000 a year in our CRP funding for a hangar addition at the airport. We have decided to reallocate that money to this project, so that would be $800,000 of that $1.1 million funding needed. I've asked Mr. Tugas, who is our airport manager, to join me this morning. If there are any questions of a technical nature that I don't feel comfortable answering, certainly he is here to help us with that. So I guess unless you have some questions, the recommended action today is determine the desire of the board. And if you're supportive of that grant and matching funds, then we would like you to give the county manager approval to sign the letter of commitment.
Any questions for Ray or Mr. Tugas?
Is this something that'd be covered in the upcoming budget, or would you just take it from fund balance?
We would use the $800,000, as Ray mentioned, from your CIP, so it'd take an additional $300,000 from fund balance.
Move for approval.
Got a motion on the table. Any further discussion? All in favor of moving forward with the project, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item number 7, a resolution amending the Person County Economic Development Commission for a change in membership. Vice Chairman Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You commissioners did have a proposal that I submitted for a change in the overall structure and the makeup of the EDC PCBI board. This is something I've not only studied for the last several months, but even more. This is only a partial amount of printed materials that I have from activities within and items regarding economic development in Person County for the last several years. The current board, I will say, with EDC, PCBIC, has been made up of very good and respectable people. I have no problem with any of them. Their service has been noble, honorable. However, in my studies and my research, and I've done that quite extensively, I feel that we need a new focus and direction in economic development in Person County. I believe there's a need for a change in the EDC board structure. And in order to make these changes occur, I think we sort of need a overhaul, I would say, of the board itself to become as effective as we need to be and hope to be in Person County. I believe a smaller makeup would be more functional, more effective, and able to work together, do away with some of the layers of government that we might see in Person County government. And I believe that board should be given some autonomy and flexibility to sort of do its job, because jobs are number one in Person County. I don't think there's anyone at this table today that would deny that. If we're going to make any progress in all the shortcomings with budgets and things of that nature, we do need new business and new industry in Person County. The document that I presented to you on the in your Dropbox, there's a couple of changes I would like to make in the overall resolution that I had. One is the chain of command structure. I would say delete that, Madam Clerk. And the structure, chain of command would remain the same. And in doing so, that would delete item 3C on the second page. So if you would delete that. And number 2, near the bottom of page 2, this resolution shall be effective July 1, 2017. That's sort of a typo error on my part, that so we could strike the words upon its adoption, make it effective July 1. Because that board does have maybe even a meeting scheduled this week and another coming next month. I have no problems with continuing on with that board for those meetings and the plans that they have, but I think a restructure there is going to be a benefit to Person County.
So would you mind explaining your proposal? You talked about page 2 and section C, but I'm sure our public is not privy to the agenda abstract.
Well, what I had put down originally, Mr. Jeffers, was a change, and essentially one change, and that was where the EDC director reported directly to the Board of County Commissioners. That's all. Everything else remains the same.
No, I mean, the new makeup of the board, you said the current one is too large. How many are on the board currently?
They're currently 9.
There are currently 9 members on the board, and you're changing it to how many on the
Well,
board?
other than a board representative, 7.
I thought I saw 8 in here.
Well,
It's
that
8,
included
correct?
me. That
So
included
you're
me.
dropping one person.
Mhm.
So we want to go from a large board of 9 to a board of 8. So if there's a tie
Well,
that
then
day,
we have the
there's a tie that
ex-officio.
day, who breaks that tie?
Yeah, we do have the ex officios, or a change there, and we do have a change as far as the at-large membership, because the structure was something like titles of people, like community college president or
Community stakeholders, I like to call them that.
Okay. So it's just a change there of making this an appointed board with prime interest of all those to be economic development.
How many current board that we have now, how many does the city have that they are allowed to appoint to the board?
I think they have the mayor, they have the city manager, and they appoint one.
Do they have an appointee now with the current system?
Yeah.
Mr. Philip Allen serves as their appointed member.
No, I mean, I know that, but on this new one we want to vote on, they're all county appointments, correct?
Yes, sir.
Do we not see the value? Now, I've had my issues with the city, it's more than anybody probably on this board, but do we not see the value of the city of Roxborough with our economic development in that they provide the services such as water and sewer?
City managers there is an ex officio as well as county manager.
They have that now, so they're gonna lose appointments, that's what we're saying. They have the mayor, they have an appointment, they have a community appointee, and then they have the manager, is that correct? So they're going from 3 to 1. So I just wanna understand the motive behind this, I mean,
County manager,
why are we doing this?
how
Why
much
are we-
money does the city give to PCBIC?
I'm sorry, was I cut off?
Ray,
Wait,
you
Ray.
finish.
Yeah, I just wanted to know what the motive.
To me, it's simple, improvement. And I see that as a,
Mr. Chairman, may I have the floor?
Certainly.
I apologize, Ray, if I interrupted you. County manager, to your knowledge, does the city of Roxborough contribute money into PCBIC fund? They do not. So all of the money, and I think this is public knowledge because the Board of County Commissioners appropriated this fund, so the $700,000+ that we get clawback money from the Force Protection Initiative, all of that went into the PCBIC EDC. Am I correct about that?
Yes, by a motion of this board.
By a motion of this board. And to my knowledge, there has been no other funding from this board since that time or from the city of Roxborough.
That is correct.
So the money that's being used on that is in principle county money that went into PCBIC.
Correct.
Okay. So my question is, if this is money that is being used, I think the Board of County Commissioners should have the stake. Now, if the city of Roxborough wants to put money into PCBIC, and we can certainly get into some talks, but this is money that this board put in there. And I think,
Oh, man.
I'm sorry?
Go ahead.
Well, didn't mean to be interrupted. But if this gives the county, the city of, the county of Person, if it's using county money, then we should have, the appointments to go along with that.
Mr. Chairman, I didn't say anything about money. I talked about the services that the city of Roxborough provides that the county currently does not. And, I mean, I think that, we've heard it several times, at least I have, in my dealings with the city, when, I would not be on the same side, is that there's one county, there's one municipality that we could learn to work together. And I don't see us doing that by cutting their stake in our economic development decisions. I think this is what that does. And Mr. Powell, Commissioner Powell, I say this with all the respect in the world, but only 6 months on the board, what makes you an expert on what's working and what's not on economic development in Person County?
I don't claim to be an expert. I've done my research, I've done my homework, I've looked at the numbers, I've looked at how many new jobs, new industry, not expansions, but new over the past 5 years. I probably see less than a dozen in new jobs in the past 5 years. I'm not an expert, don't claim to be, but the restructure.
I don't know about that dozen number. I would love to see that chart. As many projects that I've been on this board in the last 5 years.
Well, there's been
expansions
expansions
from Spuntech and things like that that added jobs.
Right.
I'm sure there were a lot added more than a dozen. And in your research, that you compare us to other counties, is Granville County just striking ahead of us? Is Caswell County just booming with jobs? Is Alamance? I mean, who's leading us? Who's doing the most in our area?
I only said new business, new industry, new job creation. I didn't say expansion of. Now, the expansions of Spuntech and Eden and the others that we're familiar with, they're corporate decisions.
So does Diamond Candles only employ 12 people?
Well, I don't know if they employ that many or not.
We have economic development people here. Do they employ more than 12 people at Diamond Candles?
Depends on the time of year. They have up to 70 around Christmas time and less than that.
That debunks that right there. That's a fact check.
Oh, that's partial. That's not even a full.
That's more than a dozen. And that's what I'm saying, that this decision, this motive is based off of 6 months of Gordon, not 6 months of staff input, not 6 months of what? No comparables to other counties our size. We just saw today with our EMS that we're comparable to a Davie and a Stokes based off population. Did we look at them? Did we see if they've added more than a dozen jobs? Did we see if they had more industry come in? Did we what?
Mr.
Mr. Clayton.
Mr. Chairman, I want to point out that presently the President Board is made up of a representative from the Chamber of Commerce, the Uptown Development, Piedmont Community College, the City Council, the council has a mayor on there, and then they are allowed one appointment. And when you look at what we're fixing to do now, we're going from positions, which I would think tends to take some of the, and these are all positions of people that were interested in leadership in Person County. So you're fixing to take that out, you're going to just X that out, and you're going to start making appointments back to the way it was done before with the good old boys. So whoever who applies and you like them, you're going to end up with enough votes to put them in there. And right now, you've got people in there that are decided about, and then we've got our at-large positions to make up the rest of them. So I feel like we're actually going backwards, and I want to echo what they've said, that since the recession, there's not a lot of new jobs out there. It's a new ball game out there, and what kind of job you're not going to get Colin and Aikman back here, because they don't do that kind of work anymore. It's all done by computers. When they tell you manufacturing now, they're talking about technological stuff. So you're not going to ever get that type of business back here. But when you look at Eden didn't go to Mexico, they stayed in Person County. And they all got a big sign up out there. I noticed they got a billboard up out there too that they're expanding, they're trying to add jobs. GKN expanded here, instead of leaving here and going to Alamance County or Lee County when they stayed in Person County. Spuntech, I would say almost doubled in size, bought new property out there to put stuff on. So they might not be a new business, but they borderline on a new business. And also the tobacco company out there, if you go down the road, you can see where they're adding that great big warehouse to put more storage out there, which that means they're paying more property tax because they're putting property out there. I just hate to see us take a step backwards. I think right now they're on the right path, and I think we need to move forward with where we're at right now. And I think if you're really dead set into doing this, I think you, from a standpoint of people that are participating, you got the Chamber President, the Uptown Development Chairman, PCC President, the city, the mayor of the city of Roxborough, and then the city has their own appointment, so they could put another city council member on there, anybody they choose. We did not stipulate that. I just think we're okay right where we're at as far as the makeup of this board is concerned. That's just my spiel on it.
Mr. Chairman, I think it's insult to say that we want to keep them on the board for 2 more months if we would approve this today, but they're doing a good job.
Well, Ray, it was better. Ray, I'll argue that with you. This isn't, again, those are some fine individuals. I was there for that meeting. You were there too. There was Jimmy was there, and there's another county commissioner sitting in the audience that was there too, that participated in that vote, and their name isn't Lee Woodall or Margaret Bratcher. So I think Commissioner Powell, being a county commissioner,
What meeting were you referring to?
I'm getting to that. I'm sorry. The meeting where an item for change was not even listed on the agenda, and it was added at the last minute when we approved the agenda.
Which is permissible.
Which is permissible, but not all members of the board were made aware of it. Now, we had a conversation about that, and I believe you said you knew nothing about that. I have no reservations, but at least 3 commissioners knew about it, okay? And There was no, county resources were used. If I remember correctly, the county attorney was asked to draw up the document that we're going by now, the bylaws. Am I correct with that, County Manager?
Correct.
That was approved without consent of the board. It was done by one county commissioner leading the charge with that.
Thank you.
I didn't
Good
give
old
it-
boy, you one of them, go ahead, keep on,
Well,
keep right on.
you can
Go
call
ahead.
me a
I'm
good
not
old
gonna
boy.
interrupt you.
Jimmy, he has a table, you can talk after he finishes.
And and if instead of just sending them a letter saying you've been fired off this board without even letting them know, and doing it behind their back at a meeting at the last minute, that's not the way I want to conduct business. And I commend you for being open, putting it on the agenda, and if I understand, you used money out of your own pocket to get this regarding changing the bylaws on this by using a private attorney instead of using county resources on it.
You know, the EDC director put together a lot of information because he asked for it in a commissioner comments at one time. He wanted the last 5 years information.
I'm talking about the document that the county attorney reviewed. So I commend you for that. And given that you put a lot of effort into it, I will make a motion to approve your recommendation
With the adjusted changes.
with the adjusted changes.
There's a motion on the table.
Mr. Chairman.
Is there any further discussion?
I make a substitute motion that we defer this consideration to a future.
Okay,
I make a motion to defer
there's a.
consideration.
There's a substantive motion on the table. Is there any further discussion on the substantive motion? All in favor of the substantive motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
No. All right, substantive motion doesn't pass.
Mr. Chairman, continued discussion on the motion of Commissioner Chairman per year.
Continue discussion.
I'd like to make public for the public know that when we changed this board before, 5 years ago, when had that last board met? We talked about the people that didn't get, they didn't know that they were getting discharged from the board. But hell, if we had sent a letter to them, they hadn't met in almost over a year, but they were in charge. They had funds at that time too, county funds that you mentioned earlier. Checks were still being written, business was still going on every day, and that board had not even met. So who were making the decisions? The good old board network. So when that came out in that meeting, and I voted to do away with that board and do with the current board that we have now, where we had people that are in positions like PCC, the city of Roxborough, people who are stakeholders in economic development in this community. What do we have now? We don't even know what the board's going to be. We just said 8. I'm sure Mr. Powell probably has 8 people in mind, but I don't know anything about them. I don't know the process of appointing. Are we going to advertise Monday? Are we going to have interviews? Are we going to appoint 2-year terms, 3-year terms? 5-year terms, I believe, is what's in there. They're going to have longer terms than us. I think this needs some thought. Maybe Mr. Powell has had 6 months to think about it, but no one else has. He kept saying that he had some ideas for economic development, that he will roll them out soon. I assumed, as a member of this board, that I would have the common courtesy to have that prior to just last Wednesday when our agenda packet comes out, to where we might could have had some discussion about this, or tried to at least work together. What's that word that politicians don't know now? Compromise. So I will be voting no, because I think to approve this is voting against economic development in Person County. I think it's a vote that will that is against current projects that we have. I think it's a vote against the work that board has done for the last 5 years. I think it's a vote against our economic development director, who has come here and done his best. And we have seen things like certainty and diamond candles. So one, the research, the facts, something is wrong if he thinks that we've only have a dozen jobs in the last 5 years, new jobs with new industry. So we've already voted against the citizens of Mill Hill because big business came and spoke. So I guess now that we're gonna allow the good old boys to represent this board. I thought all 5 of us were represent 40,000 people in this county. Done, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? We have a motion on the table. All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Item number 8, solid waste options. Ms. Tate.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm here before you from your request from our last meeting to share options for you for solid waste disposal in partnering with Granville County. I've spoken with Granville County staff, and they have estimated a tipping fee of $36 a ton for us at this point. And they have given us 2 options to consider. Those 2 options are listed in your agenda packet. The first option is for us to open a transfer station, and the second option is for us to open convenience centers. So for the transfer station option, in that scenario, we would reopen the old landfill, and we would have a transfer station located there. All residential, business, and the city waste would come to that transfer station and be dropped off there, and the estimated tipping fee that would cover all the cost of operating that facility would be $64 a ton. So that's option number 1, and this is, I have pros and cons listed in your abstract, with the con being that this is the most expensive option. However, it would be the most convenient option for the city and for private haulers. The second option is the convenience centers. In this scenario, we would have up to 4 convenience centers located throughout the county. Citizens would bring their waste to those convenience centers, and then the city and businesses would haul their waste directly to the Granville County landfill. So the pros and cons on this are that this is the least expensive, so that's a good pro for you. It's also the more convenient for residents. And then in terms of the cons, this is probably gonna have the largest impact on the city in terms of cost and also on private haulers. So in either of these scenarios, I would like to note that staff recommends if you move forward with either of these options, your first step would be to sit down and talk with Granville County Commissioners. So just wanted to let you know that. And also if you have further questions that you need more in-depth information, we would recommend that you hire a consultant, and we do have some funds and contingencies if you choose to move forward with that route.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Can I make a comment or two?
Sir.
I would like to see us get a request for a quote on a private firm operating the transfer station at the old landfill. And see what that would be. I think that somebody would haul that to Granville County, and if we leased that to them or made some type of arrangement, then that would take Person County out of the garbage business. We would have the property, and we've got an area down there. We also could provide an area down there for people to drop off certain recyclables when they're down there. We already got a scale down there. We've got a transfer station down there. I don't know whether it would need to be enlarged any or not. I doubt that it would, just for Person County's waste. If somebody did want to go to Granville County, I'm sure that they would probably be willing to accept that. And my understanding from unofficial discussions that some of the convenience sites that are near the county line, they would not object to Person County people going to those as well. And I also saw some of the Granville County commissioners last week, and I think it would be very good if maybe our chairman and vice chairman could meet with some of those and sit down and talk about exactly what we could do. I think it's important to get this, go ahead and keep this moving, and to get a request back on somebody will bite on taking that waste to Granville County. If you're talking about $64 a ton, and Granville lets them put it in there for $36, and they get enough to offset their cost in Person County to carrying it over there, then we in business, and at very little cost to the county. I just want to look at that option.
Okay, would your RFP include the capital cost of upfitting the existing transfer station? Because there are some capital costs, or are you envisioning that the county would pay for those capital costs? Or
are your capital costs estimated in this startup cost?
Yeah, so the capital cost.
Where would that number come from?
So if you actually go to the attachment for your agenda packet,
They have he's annualized the the capital cost in the columns there where it says average annual site cost. So, that's the annual capital cost, over 30 years. Now, in your abstract, I've pulled out the estimated cost for just getting started up.
Yes,
So
that's
you'll
what I'm talking
see
about, the
that.
725, where are you
Yes.
getting that number from?
The 725 comes from an estimate from the consultant, and I did speak with them.
For what,
For
the
what?
new transfer station, not the current one?
This is
Not-
for the existing transfer station to be upfit. I did speak with them, and they had one of their workers go out and take a closer look.
So who took them down there, cause it's gated? So who unlocked it?
Mr. Fushi did, yeah, thank you. Ray did. So they did take a closer look, and they did feel like after looking at it more closely.
This was recently?
This was last Tuesday.
Okay, I was
yes.
saying, I didn't think it was part of the last.
No, it wasn't. The original 725 came from a GIS map. They just looked at it aerially, and it wasn't an option.
But they kept the same number after they looked at it.
No, they actually, I didn't have a chance to update this abstract. I had to turn it into you guys before Tuesday. So I was gonna let you know that they did estimate those costs could be brought down maybe closer to 500,000. Again, without having a structural engineer come and really take an in-depth look, you're not gonna, get much more detail about those estimates, so.
So Jimmy, what I understand.
Well, I would like for them to give us a figure both ways.
Okay.
If they had to upgrade it, if they look at it, they may think it doesn't need upgrading. They may think you don't have to do anything to it. So I would say give us a proposal of what you would do this for. You know what I'm saying?
For a private company?
Yeah, I don't care whether it's
So-
First Piedmont or Clayton and Hurdle or BFI or Republic. I don't care who does it.
Okay.
Give me a price.
Okay.
I mean, that's just my thoughts.
I agree with you. The only way I would be in favor is if we don't have to put additional county money into the operation and capital upfront cost. If there's a company that wanted to come in and make a business of doing transfer,
Absolutely.
then I would be fully behind an issue of that.
I agree.
And I think you and Mr. Powell could work out a meeting with the Granville County group.
We've already
That'd be great.
discussed going over there and talking about the particulars of the issue.
That'd be great.
What's the round trip for the city to go to Republic and back?
It's on that first page. It's 56 miles round trip.
To what?
That's the gravel.
He's
That's
talking
to
about to the
Granville County
landfill.
No, I'm talking about the Republic, sorry.
Oh, from Roxborough to the landfill. I'm not sure.
14.
I think I heard 14.
14.
But I've already talked to Granville County representatives last week at the same meeting Mr. Clayton was attending, and with County Manager York, and so I think that's in process
It is.
right now.
Yeah, they've requested to meet with you all after their budget process, so we're looking at late June, early July for a meeting.
Good.
Any further discussion? So my understanding is at this point, we're gonna do an RFP for a private individual corporation or company to give us a price on operational and upfitting of the existing landfill. And move
Transfer
this-
station at the landfill.
Transfer station at the existing landfill, and we'll bring this back to the board once we get that.
That good?
Old landfill,
Yeah, the former.
old Roxborough land, Person County landfill.
Okay.
Correct. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9, presentation of the fiscal year 2017-2018 budget. Ms. York.
Good morning, Commissioners. I have a short PowerPoint presentation for you without our clicker. Sybil and I are going to try to tag team and advance through the slides for you. So I'm presenting to you today the proposed spending plan for fiscal year 17-18. This, of course, is based upon the direction and priorities of a majority of our county commissioners. Also, this spending plan reflects a commitment to very conservative spending and to, of course, to running an efficient government. We had 2 themes emerge from the budget process this year. The first being that limited resources require tighter spending. We have said that we've had tight spending in years past, and I'll show you some context of our numbers. This year was exceeded some of those. So one of our tougher budgets that I've had in the 9 years of proposing budgets for you all. And then what we also saw was that there is a major emphasis on our mandated services. We've spent a lot of time talking about optional versus mandated, and particularly those mandated services in public safety. So the results that you have in front of you is a budget of very controlled spending with a commitment to public safety both in the upcoming fiscal year and in years beyond. We tried to focus on the priority-based spending that the board has identified. Of course, the decision to adjust your tax rate is a complex decision. We spent a lot of time thinking about your options and whether or not you'd want to adjust the tax rate over multiple years or one time. We know that recent decisions by the board affecting our future solid waste made this year a kind of a hold the line on spending for us and delaying a tax rate adjustment until we have a more clear picture of your upcoming revenues and the needs of the county. So this will represent the 11th year of a consistent tax rate, continue to remain steady at 70 cents per $100 valuation. We do have some increases in spending. Again, those are targeted for those public safety critical needs and those mandated services. We have full funding of your Economic Catalyst Fund, as economic development has also been a priority of this board. And one of your favorite projects here that does impact economic development and quality of life is funded for the first year in the CIP at $1 million commitment to installing fiber. And then finally, we have seen some increased capital funding for your education facilities in this budget. A quick overview shows that your general fund is recommended at $60 million this year. That represents a 1.3% increase. Your general fund, just as a reminder, are those services that are funded primarily through your property tax dollars. And then when we add all funds, so the overall budget picture, we're including Economic Catalyst Fund, we're including Stormwater, E911, MRF, those are a few examples of all funds. Your overall increase is simply a 1% increase in spending. I want to give you some context for that. The Consumer Price Index, which we sometimes use to determine what the cost of goods and services is doing year after year, we've seen that ranging from a 2.2% up to a 2.5% increase over the last 12 months. So the spending plan for Person County government is not even keeping up with the cost of doing business. I'm going to shift to the revenues. We saw an overall increase of $754,000 in revenues. That gives you 1 penny on your tax rate at $438,930. So a slight bump over the current year, tiny. Your collection rate remains the same, that's 97.25%. And then some of the increases that we saw this year in revenue, this year looks different than we've seen in years past. So the biggest increase has been in sales tax. We've never had that from a time that I can remember. So your sales tax had the largest increase, followed by real property. This small increase in real property is really dismal. This is not even enough to purchase one ambulance in terms of what you're seeing in property taxes. And then DSS revenues are following a close third there. And what that is telling us is that there are greater needs in our community for public assistance than ever before. And then finally on the DMV collections for vehicles, a slight bump there with a collection rate of 99.95% of vehicles. So your total tax base does have a slight growth of $59 million. While that sounds like a lot, the current year, which we have touted as one of our no growth years, flat spending, flat population growth, current year saw an increase of $100 million. So next year is almost half of that. We're not expecting a lot of growth, which also fed into the idea of not raising the taxes next year. The increase that we did see was from 3 of your larger industries in their investment. And then one last bullet there, fund balance next year, we're representing an expenditure of 2.7 million. My strategy for fund balance was really focused on recovery, because in your current year, you had significant spending of fund balance for capital. So next year, we have reduced that by 736,000, and trying to hold the line again on fund balance. You do have placeholders of 600,000 each for DSS and health to help offset the timing of their revenues. And then we also have debt service of 100,000 being paid through fund balance. Going to the expenditure side, I do have some increases and some decreases. When all of the requests were submitted to me, I had whittled down those requests in this proposal to approximately $4.3 million being cut. I received requests for 17 new FTEs in the upcoming budget, and I am recommending 9. All 9 of those recommended positions are in your mandated public safety departments. I have 3 of our mandated services. That would be EMS, 911, and social services. They're unable to keep up with the workloads that they're seeing in each of those departments. And in these departments, I need you to understand how critical it can be when we can't keep up with workloads. What that means is that 911 is not able to dispatch a call. So not only can EMS not respond, your volunteer fire departments can't respond if you don't have enough telecommunicators up in 911. Another example is not having a staff ambulance able to respond to an emergency scene, or not having someone available to investigate in a child protective services case that is going to be ordered by the court for investigation. All of these situations would be unacceptable to any of our residents. So I want you to understand the critical need of adding positions at this time. And both in 911 and in DSS, both of those departments have been cited for not having appropriate staffing levels due to the workloads. So the 911 board and the State Department of Health and Human Services set staffing levels, and we are not compliant in either of those areas. So the 9 new positions that I'm recommending represent 1 position in the Sheriff's Department, 2 positions at 911 to be supervisors and over the dispatchers, 4 paramedics in EMS. That gives you half a shift. They had requested 8 to staff a new shift. My hope is that they could receive half a shift in the upcoming year with another 4 paramedics to follow in the following year. And then 2 DSS positions, again in the Child Protective Services Division. DSS and Health both are seeing increases in the personnel costs. We're implementing the classification and compensation study in those areas, so there's an increase there. And then we're also seeing an uptick in funding for education in next year's budget. Decreases that are offsetting some of these increases, one is in your capital improvement plan. You're already familiar with that. We've cut our spending by $457,000. The Economic Catalyst Fund, while it is fully funded, a lot of the not a lot, but some of the incentive agreements have been paid out, so there is actually a reduction there of $287,000. And then vehicles, which has often been our go-to place for making cuts during our budget work sessions. I've already rated that by reducing that by $313,000. You're spending $500,000 in vehicles in current year, and I'm proposing to spend only $187,000 next year. That will buy you 8 vehicles. 4 of those will be mandated for the Sheriff's Department. County workforce funding, something that's important to all of us. This would be our 5th year of merit pay recommended in the upcoming budget. The implementation of the pay and classification study, I mentioned that for your human services agencies, that's $190,000. Health insurance this year is going up by 8.4%. So for every FTE that we have, we spend approximately $8,373 in benefits that we add to the salary costs. Your total cost then for health insurance next year is $3.4 million for a workforce of approximately 400. And then we also have a required mandate from the state, the retirement contribution is going up a 0.25%, which is costing you $97,000 next year that you have no say over. On the Person County Schools, their request in the upcoming budget would have required a 5.2 cent tax increase to fully fund. Obviously, we are not in a position to consider an increase of this magnitude, but what I have recommended for them is an overall increase of $222,000, and you'll see in a chart that follows kind of how that breaks down among current expense, which is flat, capital, which is increasing substantially, technology capital, which is coming down a bit from your current year, debt service, and then your total of $11.68 million for the schools. We did take a look at the average daily membership. That's something we often talk about, what enrollment is looking like, and we're estimating from the sources that we've seen for traditional school enrollment to drop approximately 55 students in the current year, with charter schools remaining flat. On to the community college, also a large increase was requested from them. What I'm recommending is a slight increase in their current expense of $32,000. Capital expense is $62,000 increase. They did not ask for any capital in your current year, so that is all new. And they also started asking for technology capital this year, something we've been giving to the schools. I did not recommend funding for that. That was a request of $443,000. We also looked at the overall enrollment picture for the community college and did find, again, that enrollment is projected to decline next year. On your outside agency funding, so these are, of course, your non-mandated services, some of our partner agencies. The Senior Center has an expenditure next year in my proposed budget for $214,000. But that is different than what you've been funding, because now that we have opened up the new Senior Center, we are required, of course, to pay for debt service. We've also entered an agreement with them to provide for insurance, provide for maintenance. We're also doing the mowing. So our total contribution is $214,000, different than what we have appropriated in the past for their operations. The museum costs are also going up next year. We're projecting an increase of $38,000 due to utilities and maintenance needs there. I've kept drug court in there at flat $10,000. We have cut the HALO position, which you'll recall was something that supported the district attorney's office. He has decided not to fill that and asked that we instead fund the sheriff's technology specialist position. So there's a cut there. And then the volunteer fire department funding, I know we've spent a lot of time looking at our options for that. Next year I'm proposing a 2% increase in operating, flat funding for the city of Roxborough Fire Department, and again a $90,000 appropriation for the capital needs of the volunteer fire departments. Your next slide are the first is the required public hearing that you will hold June 5th at 7 p.m. in the auditorium. And then I have 3 work sessions that are proposed. I understand that we might need to adjust some of the times for some of these, but we're looking at doing 3 work sessions. You've asked to invite the superintendent and the community college president to talk about education. I know you'll want to talk about volunteer fire funding and any other topics that you can let me know ahead of time. I can prepare materials and the right people to be at some of those meetings. And for more information, all of our budget document, the presentation, a letter, more details about what's funded can be found on our website. We also have copies of your proposed budget available at the library and in the clerk's office. And of course, the public is welcome to call me at any time to talk about what is in the proposed budget. This is simply a starting place as we move towards an adopted budget, and I look forward to working with the 5 of you in this important process. I have copies of the proposed budget headed your way, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to address those. I should also let the public know that I spent a good hour with each of the commissioners talking about and briefing them on what's in here. So it's a lot of information to digest at once, but they've had somewhat of a preview of what's in there. Thank you for your time.
Any questions or concerns?
Was there a time change on one of those meeting dates?
I need to confirm that with each of you, but I think Commissioner Puryear is requesting one of those to move to a night time, and I need to line up the folks. for that.
You're gonna get back, you're gonna.
I'll get back to you.
Yeah, we'll
Yeah.
get back. All right.
Any further questions, comments? Hearing none.
Those dates are still in question for the meeting.
Chairman's report. We had a ribbon cutting last week at Rehabilitated Services downtown, so.
We short one. Those two.
I got mine right here. They're on Main Street, 210 West Main Street, or North Main Street in Roxborough. I attended that. It's a counseling group, and very nice to have any addition to our community when someone comes in and opens up a business. So we thank them for coming and being a part of that. Ms. Short?
Just to announce that the Economic Development Commission meeting is scheduled for Thursday at 8 a.m. I don't have anything else.
Vice Chairman Powell?
As acknowledged already by Commissioner Clayton, we did attend the county statewide gathering last week in Raleigh and a couple of other events. 3 times to Raleigh in 1 week is more than I particularly want to do. I don't know about the rest of you. Good information put forth to us to decipher as we go about local county business. Also, there was a good article in the Courier about Commissioner Puryear's involvement with the Elks and children. They had an Americanism, I believe is the title, essay contest, and got about 110 of our children, grades 6, 7, and 8, invited to participate in that. Had 6 winners. Very commendable on the part of the Elks, and thank you for your civic club's involvement in the youth of our county. Thank you.
Commissioner Jeffers, any report?
I did attend the county assembly day last Wednesday. I was invited down to North End to bring a dog and do a presentation, and my dog got petted by about 250, I think, K through 5th graders. So on 2 questions I could not answer. How did I tell if she was a boy or girl?
You could have answered
How
that.
did she get puppies? Those 2 answers alone, but other than that, it was a pretty good presentation. I think they enjoyed it. My dog was dog tired at the end.
Thank you, Ray. Jimmy?
Commissioner Powell said we went to Raleigh last week. We did. We had a special meeting with the Commerce Director, Mr. Copeland, and they certainly did promote Person County. I think they thought we were doing a good job. I think it's probably one of the most interesting groups I've ever seen at one of those meetings. So I hope we continue down that path. I hope this doesn't divert us from where we're at. I hope the fork in the road is the right fork instead of the dead end. We went to also the state of the region, and they have some positive things going on, but if you look over the whole region, nobody's going out there burning up the woods with economic development. They're getting things and they're getting expansions, but it's tougher than it used to be. Everybody's competing now. It's global. It's not like it used to be. It used to be that in the United States, you had North Carolina kind of competing with what was going on in North Carolina, and now you're competing with what is this company going to locate in a foreign country or not. So it's much more competitive than it was years ago.
These have our names on them. Now, I don't mind keeping Commissioner Clay's, but I wouldn't want somebody to think my
Oh,
notes
I'm
are.
sorry about
My
that.
notes are Commissioner Clay's notes.
For you.
Please see our names.
I didn't know.
We got fancy this year.
At this time, we're gonna have a closed session. We'll need a motion to enter into closed session per General Statutes 143-318.11A1 for the purpose to prevent the disclosure of information that is privileged or confidential pursuant to the law of the state or of the United States and not considered to be a public record within the meaning of Chapter 132 of the general statutes, with the following permitted to attend: county manager, county clerk, county attorney, assistant county manager.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion on the table. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. All opposed? We're in closed session.